Hi, everyone. It's Joe Veneri, the host of Fit Insider, the show where I talk with the entrepreneurs, executives, and investors who are redefining the business of fitness and wellness. Today, I'm joined by Andrew Dudum. Andrew's the founder and CEO of Hims & Hers, a telemedicine company offering a modern approach to healthcare. The company has raised nearly $200 million in funding, and its last public valuation was north of $1 billion. In today's episode, we talk about the disruptive potential of telemedicine, the difference between wellness and healthcare, how Hims & Hers was able to launch an FDA-approved at-home test for COVID-19, and Andrew's plan to be a public company worth more than $20 billion. Let's get into it. Hey, Andrew, welcome to Fit Insider. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, and to kick things off, we'll just jump right into it. Can you give the listeners the quick description of Hims & Hers, and we'll dig into the details from there?
Absolutely. So Hims & Hers is a health and wellness company that makes getting access to specialists, doctors, medicine, treatments across the spectrum of issues exceptionally easy. So what we've done is we've built a whole platform, a telemedicine platform that lets you come to forhims.com or forhers.com, select different conditions or issues you might be concerned with, such as hair loss or sexual health or acne or aging, or maybe you're experiencing flu symptoms or allergies or a sinus infection. And with just a couple of clicks, you can connect with a physician that's licensed in your state. You can have a quick consultation, exceptionally affordable, and then you can have the medication you need shipped, prescribed, and delivered to your door within a couple of days. So what we've done is really rebuilt, I think, the healthcare system in a consumer-first world and built an incredible brand that's authentic and fun and spunky that speaks to all of us in ways that encourage us to be our best version of ourselves.
Yeah, and I would agree with that, thinking about the convenience and certainly the brand as it relates to, making that healthcare experience that much better. Interested to dig into all those things, but kind of zooming out a little bit, Hims & Hers spun out of Athome, a venture studio where you're a founder and partner. Can you just talk a little bit about how Athome works and how Hims & Hers came out of that umbrella?
Absolutely. So we founded Athome about 8 or 9 years ago. And the vision there was that if you could bring together a group of investors and a group of repeat operators and repeat entrepreneurs and shove them in the same room and say, hey, every single year we have a pool of capital and we're going to test 15 to 20 new company ideas, there should be some pretty damn good companies that come out of that, right? When you take all the pattern recognition of great investors and all the pattern recognition of operators that have built companies before and scaled them successfully, you should be able to have a much higher rate of success relative to what you see in the traditional startup world, which is maybe 5 or 10% of all companies started hit a certain milestone. And so for the last 8 years, we've been building and prototyping, again, 20 companies a year. We have small teams that test distribution and test product market fit, and they test brand, and they test sales channels. And then we look at that data throughout the year across all of these different tests and decide to invest from our fund, in maybe 3 or 4 of them. So we have a couple $100 million fund. It's, anchored by great investors like Thiel and Marc and some of the best LPs in the world. And with those LPs, we're able to found 4 of these companies a year with that capital and then scale them really, really quickly. So we've been doing this now for a while. We've got probably 15 companies now that are in exceptionally high growth, revenue modes with small teams executing. And it's just this really powerful lab environment and with tons of energy behind it around bringing better companies to market faster, more efficiently, with smaller teams. And it's something that I've had the most fun doing.
Yeah, it's sorry to cut you off there. It's just a really incredible concept when you think about it, having that, you have the playbook, you have the access to talent, the access to capital, when you're able to kind of run these experiments to kind of see which ideas are working, what are sustainable, what you can scale, and so on. And that's, exactly the playbook that you put to work with Hims & Hers, especially in the early days when you were, testing out this idea around men's wellness, kind of reading and doing some research for this, the initial idea being club room. Can you talk about, testing the idea at the early days and what you saw that you were able to say, this is something that we want to pursue?
Yeah, we had an instinct in the very beginning of this business that, and this is just, I would actually, maybe instinct's the wrong word. It was maybe more of an insight from talking to so many men and women that the existing health system just really didn't meet the needs and the expectations that they had. And when you think about it, it makes sense, right? The traditional hospital, the traditional pharmacy that takes 3 weeks on average to get an appointment, and then you're waiting in a waiting room, and then your name gets called. Doctor talks to you maybe for 3 or 4 minutes as he or she is also typing on a computer, kind of looking away on the side. Then every month you have to go pick up a drug, wait in a line at Walgreens or CVS. Like, all of this was made before the internet. And you can tell, right? It's exceptionally tactical, and there's so many barriers there because of it that are completely unnecessary. And so when we spoke to people in their 20s and 30s and 40s, so many of them were completely outside of the health system. They said that they hadn't seen a doctor in years, or 80 or 90% of them couldn't even name their general practitioner, which was an incredibly scary statistic. So we had that insight. But then when we started testing, the numbers became obvious. And what we did was we put a really small amount of capital. We allocated about $50,000, and a few of us essentially built a mobile app, and we built it over a weekend. And that team is still with us at Hims and Hers, or they're some of the core members of the team. And the mobile app lets you download this, answer 10, 15, 20 questions about your health and wellness, and then select different conditions that you're worried about. And it could be hair loss, it could be sexual health, whatever it might be. And then actually pay to get connected with a physician and have that physician evaluate you for a medical treatment. We downloaded this again. We put $50,000 or so into marketing, and this is kind of testing. Let's see how people respond to this. Let's see if there's interest in it. And the numbers were outrageous. We went from 0 to over $1 million in sales in about 5 weeks in this prototype. And so what we did is, frankly, immediately shut it down because we were not staffed to equip successfully this business. We looked at the data. We looked at the cohorts of people coming in, the types of customers coming in, the types of issues they were experiencing, the types of requests they were asking for. And then we lined up that data against other ideas we were testing. And the dynamics were step function different, right? The acquisition costs were so much more affordable. People were having click-through rates and fill rates through the funnel that were outrageous. They were going through dozens and dozens of steps to get to a checkout. And then, a huge percentage of which were fully checking out, even at, price points that were not trivial, 30, 40, 50 bucks a month for this medicine, because it's real pharmaceutical medicine. And I think all of those numbers gave us the confidence, on top of the insights that we had, that the demand was there, that we knew how to scale it, that we knew the type of customer that was going to buy this end product. And that now was the right time. And so with that, we shut it down. We decided to raise some seed capital with that data from some of the best investors in the Valley, including Kirsten Green at Forerunner and Josh Kushner at Thrive. And from there, we spent maybe 9 months, built the Hims and Hers brand, built the telemedicine infrastructure, built the pharmacy drug supply chain, built the team, and actually officially launched the business.
And so you have the initial insights that you put out into the market and start to test. You have the validation that this is something that people obviously want. The demand is so much so that you can't keep up with it. How did it go from this idea of, a wellness company, maybe it's the dermatology product or hair loss or sexual wellness, to this is a $1 billion healthcare company that's going to reimagine the healthcare system as we know it?
I think I had, it's interesting. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, when they start a company, they realize there's depth to their company that they might not have known. And I think some of the best businesses ever started This is something we talk about at Atomic quite a bit. Start off as toys, or start off as products, and then become companies, right? So you think of TikTok, right? You think of Instagram, right? These are things that are simple. I'm going to connect you. I'm going to let you buy a thing. It's going to be simple and easy and fast. But there's so much more underneath the surface of what that customer wants, and it's abundantly clear. And so Hims and Hers, it was exactly like that. From the beginning, this company was like an onion, right? You'd keep peeling it back, and there was another layer and another layer and another layer. And so we knew that from the insights from speaking with these customers before we launched, and that was one of the reasons that we named the business Hims and Hers, right? It wasn't a brand dedicated to sexual health. It wasn't just an online pharmacy. It wasn't a place to get hair loss drugs quickly. It wasn't a place to get birth control delivered to your door. It was Hims and Hers, which is a household name for health and wellness. And that's what we started with, because we knew that was there, that potential was there. But it became obvious within the first months that customers wanted more, right? They would love the brand. They said, hey, that was so simple for me to get my birth control. I'm really struggling with psoriasis, or I'm struggling with eczema, or I'm struggling with adult acne. Do you have anything for dermatology, right? Can I talk to a dermatologist? Or on the men's side, oh my God, I've been so concerned about hair loss for years. I'm 24. I didn't think I should be balding this quick. I got Hims. Now it's working, and my hair is growing back. But now I'm not sleeping well. Like, I'm having really trouble sleeping, and I'm having a lot of anxiety. Is there anything to help me sleep, or is there any coaching, or is there any therapy that I can work on, because it's really affecting my life, right? And so that onion and the depth of the consumer demand was really there, and it continues to be there. I mean, and you see that from the company. Even in the last 3 and 4 months, we've launched dozens and dozens of new medical conditions for people. And I think it's just because the gap between what people want today, in a world where we've been spoiled by Amazon, right? I pick up my phone, I click a button, and if it's not same day delivery, I'm like a little bit agitated, right? Oh, this isn't on Prime. Like, damn, right? In a world where that is the norm, scheduling an appointment to see a doctor for something you're really worried about, and then waiting 3 weeks, and then waiting in a waiting room, and then having it cost $40 to $50 just for a few minutes, and then having to drive to CVS every single month and pick up those meds, is just not an experience that is up to par. And so we saw that demand from the beginning. We saw that depth. And I think it's why we have had our eyes set from the beginning on this not being just a small health and wellness brand, but actually us rebuilding the healthcare system in a way that 10 and 15 years from now will be what the healthcare system is for the majority of the country. And that's a 20 or 30 or 40 or $50 billion company that's lasting for many decades.
Right. Certainly a massive opportunity when you think of the industry and the inefficiencies that are in it. A couple things that come up that I just wanted to maybe clarify. We talk a lot about wellness, we talk a lot about health, and then we talk about healthcare. The lines across those things are blurring, and now it's kind of moving in the direction of personalized healthcare for individuals, for different ailments, focus on that convenience factor. Certainly telemedicine is a piece of that. How do you distinguish, or do you differentiate between those terms at Hims and Hers?
In my mind, and I think the way the team thinks about it, it's all on a spectrum, and all of it is your health. When you talk to people that are in their 20s and in their 30s and their 40s, there's no different playing field of this spectrum from when you're talking about things like meditation and yoga, from when you're talking about things like anxiety medications. They are just on different sides of how serious and how Eastern versus Western you want to go for this specific condition, right? And I think that is the new norm, is that when people have issues they're struggling with related to their health and their wellness, and that could be mental, it could be physical, it doesn't matter. people need to make a decision of where they want to start on that spectrum. And I think a lot of people for a lot of conditions like, say, acne, are willing to start straight at the pharmaceutical side. Like, hey, give me something like a prescription tretinoin cream that I can put on because I'm 35 and I have pimples, and that is not okay. And so, I'm not going to mess around with this stuff at Walgreens that's, water and different scents mixed in for my skin. I'm going to go to a dermatologist and I'm going to get the medicine that works. Now, for other issues like, say, mental health, there's a huge amount of options that are clinically proven to be effective that are not pharmaceutical. It could be cognitive behavioral therapy. It could be meditation. It could be yoga. It could be stress management. It could be better sleep. And so people will want to start kind of earlier on in that spectrum. But from my perspective, for Hims and Hers, we need to offer both. And we need to offer that full spectrum because it's all health related. It's all healthcare. It's all wellness. It's all the exact same thing. It's just a question for people of preference of how serious is this issue? How aggressive do you want to be? What's your comfort level with that aggressive option? And what have you tried in the past, and what has worked and not worked? Because I think all of that will inform where we begin and will help the physician recommend where to begin. So I think that's how we think about it. I very much believe over the course of the next few years, that trend will continue to happen where wellness and health are fairly interchangeable. Because if you ask me today, the difference after looking at the millions of customers that buy all types of products from us, there is no discernible difference between those two words.
Do you feel like that it's the responsibility at some point at the company to say, or where do you draw the line between the kind of anecdotal, this makes me feel better, it's on the health spectrum, and this is like pseudoscience flat out, and how that, like what those conversations might look like internally to differentiate?
Absolutely. I think the word wellness has in a lot of ways been tainted by very large breadth of products, and many of which just have absolutely no clinical or medical backing for them at all. Right? We as a company with Hims and Hers are resolute that we will only put things on our platform that we ourselves would take, and that our medical team and physicians say is the best, highest quality product for these conditions. Now, does that mean every single thing is FDA approved? Absolutely not. Right? There's a tremendous amount of great products, and there's a tremendous amount of data around things like, say, supplements or say cognitive behavioral therapy that have clinical studies behind it that are not FDA approved. And so you'll see those types of things on our platform along with the pharmaceutical options, but you won't see things on a platform that have no data behind them, and that we can't stand behind, and that we can't confidently look in your eye and say, if you're interested in something that's a little bit more, say, Eastern, or a little bit more wellness based versus traditional pharmaceutical, that it doesn't work. Like this stuff is as good as it's going to get, and this is what the consensus is from the medical community, and that's a bar we have for all of the products we launch.
It's certainly important. The industry is certainly trending that way when you look at the influence of like you mentioned, Eastern medicine. So legitimizing some of those things and bringing them along on the spectrum and platform, I think is important because people have certainly shown the interest in them nonetheless. And I think when you look at the Hims and Hers brand, the marketing, the specific products, in addition to this kind of wellness focused angle, there's also the point that's being made of destigmatizing kind of highly stigmatized areas across, the health spectrum as well. How and what role did that play in the different products that you choose to launch, and just how you've built the platform as you've gone along?
The vision for the company was always kind of founded in this pillar of improving access for people to health and wellness products. And when you start to chip away at what access means, and what are the barriers to access, there's a few, right? There's cost. In a lot of situations, people just, they frankly can't afford, a bottle of tretinoin, which might cost cash pay $150 for acne. right? So we can compound it and we can get it to you for 20 or $30 a month, right? At a huge, huge price reduction. Or maybe somebody's suffering from erectile dysfunction and Viagra used to cost $65 per pill, and we can now sell it to you at $2 per pill, right? So cost was a huge barrier. Location was obviously a barrier, right? There are 2/3 of rural communities in this country are in medical deserts, which means there's not a specialist physician for all of these conditions within a couple of hours of driving, which is a huge problem. And then the last big bucket is stigma, right? I'm so ashamed of the fact that I'm suffering from Y, even though I'm like X, that I can't get treatment for it. And people don't want to talk about it. They don't want to. They don't want to admit that they're struggling. They don't even know who to talk to. But even if they did, they don't want to go in person and discuss it. And so that stigma accounted for a very large percentage of the access problems for the majority of medicines that we started with, and that includes obviously sexual health for men and women. Birth control, for example. If you live in certain parts of this country and you're trying to get access to birth control, you go to your physician, and your physician also happens to be the general practitioner and physician for your family and maybe your parents. It's a really tough conversation to ask for birth control, even if you're 20 or 21 or 22. You talk about hair loss. Guys in their 20s starting to experience it. 30% of men by their early 20s are experiencing hair loss. That's not a time you're supposed to be experiencing hair loss, right? You're supposed to be in college and having fun. Hair loss is for guys on the Rogaine packages, right? It's for guys that are in their 50s with gray hair. So, they're scared and they don't know who to talk to, and they feel ashamed that they're experiencing it and isolated. So for a lot of the conditions we started with, breaking down that stigma and being a catalyst for conversations. And in some situations, if people have seen our advertising, making people laugh, right? And making people look twice, and making these things, beautiful and something you want to buy and a little bit witty and a little bit provocative. All of that was exceptionally intentional because we saw that stigma was, the barrier for so many men and women, preventing them from even taking the first step of being well. And so we as a company hold that as a kind of a pillar that we need to continue to activate conversations. We need to continue to, be front and center, talk to people authentically, encourage them to be well, empower them to take care of themselves, make it fun and beautiful and considered, to the best of our abilities, given it's healthcare and it's serious, and hopefully decrease some of those barriers that are preventing them from taking care of themselves.
And now, right, there's a lot of those kind of pillars that are converging. Initially, it was the patents expiring on certain medication, the easing of restrictions on telemedicine, people focusing on destigmatizing different ailments and now going direct to consumer with these things, and this personalized healthcare space, the idea that we're going to kind of modernize the healthcare industry has seen a whole bunch of companies jumping into that recently, and call it the last 3 to 5 years. How do you think about that space evolving and where Hims and Hers fits in, and in the cases you're thinking about, it stands out and separates yourself?
Yeah, it's a great movement that's taking place, right? You've got a huge unlock of regulation where people are really seeing the benefits of telemedicine. One of the positives, if you can even say that, of this horrific pandemic is that people are seeing how affordable and accessible it is to get access to specialists from their phone, which is increasing access dramatically and teaching the population that they can speak to a physician safely and affordably, without leaving their home, which is really broadening access dramatically. And so there's this huge wave, and I think the wave is just beginning. It's like the tiniest wave at the moment of what will become the future healthcare system in the next 5 and 10 years. And so we're excited by all of that, right? The whole thing needs some revamp and some rethinking. And I think where Hims and Hers really will sit is the brand that consumers love and the place that they can trust to get a wide selection of the things they're most worried about. We'll always talk to you honestly. We'll always talk to you directly and bluntly, like you're our little brother or like you're our older sister that we care about and we're invested in and we want to be well. We will always have prices as transparent as possible and as affordable as possible. And the products will actually be products you love, right? It's going to be an experience you love. It's going to be rounded out with not only the pharmaceuticals, but also the over-the-counter products and consumer goods that we feel are necessary for full treatments and full routines. And I think we'll be there across all of those conditions and having conversations with you that are tough to talk about. And so I think that's where we're really different, right? We approach it from a consumer perspective first. We've always been direct to consumer always. And when you think about the healthcare system, while the consumer is the person getting care, they are called the patient for a reason, right? Because they are a recipient of care. And when you look at the financial incentives within the healthcare system, so many people are making money and so many people are being optimized except for the consumer, right? It's terribly expensive for them. And so we as a business will always be oriented towards people. And how do we make it easier and simpler and cheaper and more affordable and more beautiful and more enjoyable for people? And we're going to do all of this nasty stuff behind the scenes with pharmacies and managing provider networks and insurance and all types of complicated things so that you can come to us and feel like it's just like shopping at your favorite brand and an experience you love. And I think that's something that's going to be very different from the rest of the crowd.
That's an interesting point of differentiation. And when you think about putting the patient or consumer kind of the heart of everything that you're doing, how do you determine what the next releases in terms of products are or treatments? Because it seems like more recently it's ramped up even what you guys have been able to do already in 2020. So what does that pipeline look like and how do you decide what comes next?
Yeah, it's such a great question. So it's a mix of two things. The first is just talking to people, right? We have millions of customers for Hims and Hers, and they love the brand. I mean, there's like hundreds and hundreds of people that are posting about it every week on social media, sharing their stories about a condition they were struggling with, the treatment they got, the results, how it's working, what they love, what they're adjusting, etc. And so we talk to those people really frequently, and we understand what they're most worried about, the things that they're thinking about, the other products that they feel would be complementary to the existing treatments they have, as well as completely new areas that they're starting to feel some degree of concern about that we could hopefully, play a role in solving. So I think that's a huge part of the bucket. And then the second is, we work with some of the best medical communities in the country. Dr. Toby Cosgrove is on our board of directors, who's the CEO of the Cleveland Clinic for the last 15 years. Dr. Patrick Carroll is our chief medical officer. He was a chief medical officer for Walgreens for the last 5 years. Some of these individuals from our board to our operating team, to our provider group, to some of our partners like Ochsner Health and Johns Hopkins and other hospital systems are able to help us get educated on the conditions that really are affecting the most people in this country and that need revamps. So we look at it from a mathematical standpoint. What are the conditions that are most negatively affecting health for men and women in the country? Where is the biggest discrepancy and delta between the issue and the solution, right? Maybe because there's an education gap, because there's a price gap, because getting treatment is so damn hard that no one ever even does it. What are the clinical results of this problem? Like how sick does it make people? What are the other comorbidities that kick in that cause problems later in life? So I think we're looking at that matrix kind of from a top-down number standpoint of where can we actually make the biggest impact in people's lives and in people's health. And that's another way that we look at this framework. And you see that in the things we've launched. A couple of weeks ago, we launched a whole mental health category, which involves free online group therapy sessions where people can come join every single week, sessions that are led by therapists and mental health experts. And then it will also include customized one-to-one therapy, as well as the ability to get evaluated by a psychiatrist online and then prescribed whatever necessary generic medication, so it's affordable, anxiety and depression medication shipped to your door every single month, right? Because there's so many people suffering from that. And then you saw even yesterday, and by the time this goes live, maybe a week ago, the fact that we launched an entire Spanish-speaking platform for Hims and Hers, which allows the 40 million Americans in this country that almost exclusively speak Spanish at home have a completely tailored experience where they can get tied to a native Spanish-speaking physician. They can get their prescription and their consultations completely in their native language. And then this is a community where, during times of recession and turbulence in the economy like we're experiencing today, they're often the hardest hit, right? They're the frontline workers. They're losing their insurance at higher rates than anybody else. Their savings are dwindling quicker than anybody else. And so being able to offer a telemedicine platform to connect them to a physician that's native in their language was critically important. So those are initiatives that, we both heard from our customers, but also the medical community helped inform us of the importance of them and the depth of those problems.
Yeah, you're moving fast. A lot of different product launches kind of related to that. Recently, you mentioned the Spanish speaking and the mental health. Another one was the FDA approved at-home COVID testing. Can you just talk about how that came about and how you were able to get that out so quickly? I know some other companies in the kind of direct-to-consumer healthcare space ran into some regulatory hurdles, but you were able to turn it around. How'd that happen?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we launched just about a week ago is the ability for anybody that's experiencing a symptom of COVID-19, so heaviness in your chest, a cough, a fever, whatever it might be, to come fill out a quick consultation on forhims.com or forhers.com, get connected with a physician, and they can prescribe you an at-home saliva test. And what happens then is a kit will get shipped overnight to your door. You spit in a tube, so none of this crazy, shoving a Q-tip to the back of your brain type stuff. You just literally spit in a tube, you close the tube, and there's a prepaid return label. You put it in that envelope and it gets shipped overnight back to our partner labs, and you'll get results on your phone within a day or two. And this was a huge push for the company for the last couple of months. Everybody who's paying attention at all to the news or aware of the virus knows that the testing limitations are some of the biggest limitations for why we have struggled to get back to work and why our ability to flatten the curve has been so much worse than the majority of countries in the developed world and even in the less developed world. And so we have been working with partner labs, and in this situation, we work with Rutgers Biologics Laboratory and have been working directly with the FDA over the last 60 days to show them data that an at-home test where a customer could self-collect, so it doesn't require a doctor to do that Q-tip. It doesn't require a doctor to draw blood, which saves our doctors time and lets them focus on the critically ill. And it lets you do it at home from the safety of your home without going to the doctors and the hospital where a lot of people are scared to even go. Doing that at home and spitting in that tube is just as safe and just as effective as doing it in person with a doctor. And we were able to show them that data, and they saw it and they were convinced, which was amazing. And we were able to launch that test. And a lot of companies tried this in the last 90 days and with all the best intentions, because everyone's trying their best to help in whatever way they can. I think the vast majority of them moved a little bit too fast, right? And did not work hand in hand with the FDA. And for that reason, the FDA shut them down almost immediately. And so with our test, it's the first at-home test approved for emergency use by the FDA. That's a saliva test. And that's really, really special. And so we're really proud to have that live on the platform today. It's $150, which is exactly what it costs us to have the lab get it to you so quickly, shipped overnight both ways, and have the doctor prescribe and oversee your treatment. So it's completely at cost. The company makes no money. And you can now get these delivered to your house, which is a huge opportunity, I think, for the country, and hopefully can help reduce the spread rates and also help us get back to work really fast.
Yeah, really impressive. You were able to pull that together. At this point, do you have a sense of how scalable is it right now in terms of the number of people it can do in a day or a week, what have you?
Yeah, we have a number of labs that we're getting online that I believe will have authorization for this test relatively quick, which will continue to increase the volume that we can power. At the moment, the labs that we work with, we believe we can be doing 15, 20, 30,000 per day, scaling in the next couple of weeks, which I think is quite a bit. But the hope is to get it far past that in the coming weeks.
Wow. And then kind of pivoting as we move towards wrapping up here, just thinking about obviously things now we mentioned with COVID accelerating even more the movement towards the telemedicine and how it can have an impact on the industry, and kind of doing some research for this interview, heard you talk about, we're not interested in selling the company, maybe having, a few $100 million in revenue and looking to exit. You're really focusing on building a multi-generational company that transforms healthcare. Potentially, I believe I read the one you're aiming for at some point, a company that can be valued at $20+ billion. What does that roadmap look like to get there?
I think it's a little bit simpler than people think, which is just, my perspective is focus on the customer, understand the issues they're struggling with, understand the conditions that they're fearful of, and the access issues that they have and the barriers that are preventing them from getting treated, and then figure out on the back end how to make it as simple as possible. And that could be through telemedicine, it could be through supply chain, it could be through pharmacy operations, it could be through partnerships with hospital systems, it could be partnerships with retail organizations. We went live in all 1,600 Target stores just a couple of weeks ago. So you can now get all of our over-the-counter products like minoxidil and sleep vitamins and immunity and moisturizers and shampoos for hair loss and things like that for Hims and Hers across every Target in the country. So it could take place and take shape in a lot of different ways, but focus on the customer and continue to make it easier and more affordable and more beautiful to encourage them to take care of their health and wellness. And I think that roadmap is relatively laid out for you.
It's amazing. It's certainly an incredible opportunity and vision as you think about reimagining healthcare. With that, we'll get you out of here on this. Where can folks learn more about Hims and Hers?
You can go for all the men out there to forhims.com, and for all the women, forhers.com. And you can take a look at all of the specialized conditions and products we have for all of the stuff that each of us are thinking about and worried about, or wake up and look in the mirror and evaluate. All of the options are right there, and it's super easy and affordable. And within 5 or 10 minutes, you can get an evaluation by a physician and the treatment you need shipped to your door. So I encourage everyone to be well, and especially at this time when we're at home, to invest in themselves and being the best version of themselves. And it's a great opportunity to focus inward a little bit.
Perfect. Andrew, thanks so much for joining us. I'm excited to share this conversation with the listeners.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks everyone for listening to today's episode. For more from Fit Insider, visit insider.fit.co and subscribe to our weekly newsletter for insights and analysis on the business of fitness and wellness. Then go ahead and subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. See you next time.